Hello, everyone. This is Keith Stone with the Center for Hellenic Studies, and I'm here again with Gregory, Nagy, and Janet, and Sarah, and Alen for HeroesX Office Hours, version 10 of HeroesX. And we are talking about the last three discussion questions of the project for hours 22, 23, and 24. So let me just read only the first question this time, since we have so many.
Yes.
For hour 22, the question is, do you think that the quest of Socrates, expressed as a theoria, is really heroic? And I saw that there were some answers, but I didn't have time to look deeply at them. What would you like to bring to our discussion in those answers, or responses, I should say?
Well, it's true that he's not a typical heroic or epic hero, because he doesn't have an ancestor who is a god. So, you know.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true.
Nevertheless, you know, he mentions the way Achilles becomes a hero by dying for what he believes was just. And this is what Socrates is.
I wonder, did he ever get a divine ancestor along the way as the centuries rolled on?
No.
The philosophers?
Not that I can tell. No. I'm very happy to report, though, that on the basis of new readings, I'm at least convinced that he did have a hero cult. Socrates did have a hero cult situated in Plato's academy. In fact, even Plato had one.
I'd love to learn more about that, perhaps in another venue,
in another installment. But here's something that I think is relevant to my question. I now have deep regrets that I phrased my question the way I did, because really we don't get to the word theoria till hour 23. And so I'm putting our participants at disadvantage. But you can still talk about theoria as a journey of a soul, as a philosophical quest to find truth, and to arrive at formulas about social justice. So I don't regret it all that much. It's just that I wish I hadn't used the word theoria for hour 22. It's premature.
Yes, and it's true that he dies at the right time. So.
He does, yeah. And he says, this is the hora, and that is heroic language. I see that more and more clearly as time goes by, how important that is. And to say now is the hour, that's just a cliche in English. But in the Greek, hora is not a cliche. It has deep meaning.
And one of the participants mentioned the language used for this ordeal, labor, trials. So the language is heroic, for sure.
Very much so, very much so. Almost to the point of being technically heroic, related to the language of hero cult as we've been trying to reconstruct it all these hours. Yeah.
He's certainly facing death. I guess this is me giving my own answer instead of responding exactly.
Yeah.
But he's, I mean, hour 22 is the trial.
Yes.
And his apology at the trial, and he's facing death right there. So it's very heroic in that sense.
And one of the participants also has mentioned that, you know, there's no material gain here. He's on a quest for truth.
Yes.
Which is more of a, as you say, a journey of the soul. But they've also pointed out, though, that it isn't exactly a theoria in the sense that he isn't representative of the state. In fact, he seems to be the opposite, doesn't he?
Yes, yes, you're quite right. And this is almost like a segue to hour 23, is that in my argumentation in the book version of Ancient Greek Hero in 24 Hours, I I try to make the point that Theoros is an official delegate sent by a city-state, officially sent by the city-state. And there's nothing like that in the case of Socrates himself, except if you think of the person who goes to the Delphic oracle and asks that question. But even that, it shouldn't be happening when it comes to a private matter, because it's a private question. It's not a public question as far as the state is concerned. So it is subversive. It could be seen as subversive.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but at the same time, he wants to save his fellow citizens.
Yeah.
By engaging into a never-ending dialogue.
Yes.
About truth, about justice.
Yes, it's true.
Is there anything else we should touch on with hour 22 before we go to 23?
I say let's push ahead. Let's push ahead because 23 is so rich.
Hour 23, the question is there any way to imagine that Plato was actually present when Socrates died? If he really was there, why would he want to cover his tracks, as it were?
It's a trick question, if ever there was one. But I'll tell you what, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, who got the trick? Did anyone see through the ruse?
Well, they don't really know, so they yes, but they offered several options, you know. Maybe he was there, but he doesn't want to be perceived as being present, you know.
That's it. It's exactly it. In other words, there's not enough of a strong signal. I'm using the technical language of radio communication. There's not a strong enough signal from Plato, the person, or at least modestly, if he thinks that, then that's why he's too weak to be there. He's too weak to put himself into the position of being a part of the cast of characters. I'm not sure about all of this. I just know that my dear friend, the late Nicole Leroux, was fascinated with the fact that if we put aside the letters attributed to Plato, then in the rest of the oeuvre, Plato is mentioned twice only. Once in the Apology, where Socrates is looking out towards the people attending the trial and say, oh, I see Plato. Well, but he mentions many other people, including a brother of Plato. And then the other time is this strange question, were you there? And it's a fact that Plato is suppressing his own presence in the dialogues, and not just the dialogues where Socrates is speaking, but even in, for example, well, I'll just leave it at that. He's just not there.
Did anyone offer a reason for why, for why Plato might not have wanted to be present, literarily speaking?
Well, one participant wrote that Plato wants to be as unnamed and unnoticed as a medium, a flute, transmitting the song of Socrates.
Beautiful.
In his, yeah.
I agree with that. Yes.
That's interesting. I mean, if he was there for these conversations when they first happened, so to speak, he must have been asking questions or partaking.
Yes,
so which characters represent Plato's questions?
Oh my!
I wonder.
Oh my! It's more that Socrates is representing Plato's answers. That's what I would say.
So that's why he disappears.
That's why he has to disappear.
He gets absorbed into Socrates.
But when I say that, of course, I'm also saying that no Socratic answer is 100% complete. They're so open-ended. I can't even call them answers. Let's just say they're dialogic responses, asking for, even demanding further responses.
Right.
So
one of the participants has been looking at the idea of not wanting to bring the discussion to an end by having this report. That's an end, but then it enables the discussions to keep going. But then also what you were touching on, that it can also distance himself a little bit to allow the discussion, as it were, to go on through his own ideas and his own philosophy.
yes, and certainly today's philosophers will say things like, oh, Plato's Phaedo is a crash course, so to speak, on Plato's theory of forms. Nobody says Socrates' theory of forms. It's Plato's theory of forms, and that's certainly the way the reception of Plato by his students went on. It's not Socrates' constructs, it's Plato's constructs. That's what people today say, right?
But can we take him at all at face value, saying that it would have been too overwhelming for him? He does say he wasn't feeling up to it,
Yes.
and he didn't want his emotions to get the better of him. Can we take that at face value?
Well, but I was just thinking about it, that when we talk about radio signals, and I was thinking of science fiction where some other celestial body is trying to make contact with planet Earth, but the signal is so weak. The verb is arrostein, which means it's a weak signal. And I just can't think of it as meaning, well, Plato had a cold that day, so he didn't show up. He sicked out. I just don't see that.
So with this verb, radio clearly is not the metaphor. What is the metaphor behind the weak signal of this verb?
Arrostein, well,
Is it a visual signal?
It's just weakness. It's not illness, it's weakness.
Okay.
That's why I thought we say in technological language that there's a weak signal coming from outer space.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking about.
But the report is so vivid.
Oh, that's just it. But that's because technically it's Socrates, and Socrates even has that special way of looking at people, and it's so endearing. And here's another thing. When we read Xenophon, and I wish I could say I'm an expert in Xenophon, but from what I can experience, Xenophon, Socrates is not a very attractive figure. I don't think I'd want to meet him, but I'd certainly want to meet Plato's Socrates. So what does that say? That's why it's a trick question.
Well, how about hour 24?
Here we go.
Why is it important for the citizens of Athens to think of the hero Theseus as a figure?
Yeah. Well, can I tell you what was going through my mind when I was asking that? This is not a trick question. It's more like a wake-up call for all of us, and that is that we think of Theseus simply as another hero. But for Socrates as an Athenian, for Plato as an Athenian, for all Athenians, Theseus is our founder. He is the hero who, by way of retrojection, represents everything that democracy stands for. And I mean democracy. He is how did I say it, a retrofit of today's democratic way of thinking all the way back to the heroic age. And that's very different from the way we think of Theseus, because we think, oh, he's Hippolytus's father. What a tragic figure, but we kind of forget about his Athenian self-identification. And even with Oedipus at Colonus, he just happens to be the king at that time of Athens, but he's so much more. And that's why when at the beginning of the Phaedo, Theseus is presented as the savior and as the inventor of the Theoria, which is that sacred voyage from Athens to Delos and back. That's something so civic that I'd almost like not to think of Theseus as a person. After all, his name just means our founder. But to think of Theseus as representative of Athenian values and what makes Socrates not just a Greek, but an Athenian Greek.
Yes, and one participant writes that he is also the only witness of Oedipus's death.
In the OC, in the Oedipus at Colonus, yes. So it's true that in the Oedipus at Colonus, we see more clearly that special Athenian characteristic of Theseus, less so in the Hippolytus, I would say.
About the Theoria, one of them has people has been saying, well, it was clearly so important, it was still being reenacted in Socrates' time. And then there's a question that has come up about that. How long did that seasonally recurring Theoria stop being a ritual? How long did that actually continue?
That's a very good question, and it seems to have continued for a very long time because people were still playing philosophical games about what part of the sacred ship would have gone all the way back to the original, because there's this idea, well, the heroic age is so many years ago. If that ship had been sailing already then, because Theseus made the first voyage, the first Theoria himself, to celebrate the freeing of the Athenians from the domination of King Minos and the Minoan Empire. Well, if we go all the way back, and if that good ship had been sailing back and forth every year ever since Theseus sailed it, surely every particle of that ship, every splinter would have in the course of time been replaced. And so this was a big philosophical debate that goes, and as far as I can see, well beyond 399 BCE. So it's a time-honored tradition. What isn't time-honored is, may I put it in a playful way, that Plato and Plato's philosophical program have hijacked the word. Theoria should still mean the sacred voyage that celebrates our salvation as Athenian citizens. But what does it mean? It means philosophical discourse. It's what Socrates was doing while the ship was sailing in 399 BCE. And what was Socrates doing? He was theorizing. So now the journey of the soul, in this case, the soul of a philosopher, has displaced, replaced in the minds of people like you and me, what a theoria is. We don't think of that ship. We think of theorizing that we do because we're just picking up the pieces where Socrates left off.
Yes, we don't think of the reenactment of the ritual. We don't think of the dancing and singing and the crane dancing.
Yes, yes, all of that is gone. The glory of Athens in many ways has gone. Sure, in other ways it's perpetuated, but certainly not the sacred voyage, certainly not the theoria. Athenians don't do that anymore. and they haven't for a very long time.
And there's another question, actually, and that's in terms of thinking about Theseus as a savior. To what extent would the Athenians have felt an emotional connection to him? If he's, not just a hero, but
yeah, very much so. Theseus is our founder, our Athenian founder, and the founder of everything we value, not just as a city, but as a city that has a form of government that we call democracy. So he's even, mythologically speaking, a retrojection of democracy. He's the proto-democrat. Yeah.
Yeah, he's also saving every year 7 young Athenians.
Yes. Yes.
So cumulatively, he is saving.
Yes.
The Genos.
Yes. 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 So the mission of salvation keeps happening. Now, of course, there was a period where in the 5th century, Athens could say, well, we're not just a city, we're an empire, or we're the cradle of civilization. So Athenians love to speak for all Hellenes, of course. And so that kind of fades because Athens becomes more and more, and starting with the 4th century, a university town rather than a metropolis of Greek civilization, which it was in the second half of the 5th century. So there's a rapid decline, and I like to think of Athens starting with the 4th century as the Cambridge, Massachusetts of Greek civilization. And that's switching gears, isn't it? People talk about Boston as the Athens of America. I'm saying that in a sense, Athens becomes the Cambridge, Mass of Greek civilization. In the sense it's a wonderful university town, but it's no longer a world power. I would say, I'm extreme in saying it this way, but already by the 4th century, they've been put out of business as a real empire. They still talk imperial, but they're not. And of course, Theseus would be the founding figure of that as well. So later on, he becomes a founding figure of a university town, but then eventually, the real savior is philosophy, not Socrates, but philosophy.
He becomes the John Harvard of Athens. University town.
Perhaps.
Well, is there anything else that we should cover before this most recent word comes to an end?
Well, because this hour 24 is about the hero as a savior, I think maybe it's important just to say again that what's the savior by the time we finish the 2 dialogues of Plato is the word itself. It's the word that keeps on getting reactivated every time we think about important things like social justice, what is truth, and all those other wonderful things in the philosophical project. All of that is understandable to us, I think, in a more clear way, since we've struggled through all of these myriad stories about heroes and their labors. It all comes together as the legacy of Hellenism. Hellenism in the most ideal sense of the word. That's the living word, and that is our savior.
Well, friends, that's our latest installment. This is our last one for this run of the project.
This is the latest one. The latest one.
I always say last.
Because the word cannot stop.
Right. The latest.
The latest. Yes. But thank you, all of you, for these stimulating dialogues which just keep the word living. Thank you.